Okay. Hi, Kathy. One thing that we learned from your book, and again, thanks for the free copy, is that it's really useful, whether you're in an IB school or a school from any other provider of education, that we do see service learning according to the 5 stages that you've laid out. Now, one thing that I've noticed with some schools is that they miss out the investigation stage. They go straight into planning.
Right into
Now, what do you say to schools who are doing that, and what's the importance of investigation?
I say stop. I'm going to just no. You can't skip that spot. In the early days of service learning, there were only 4 stages, and it was preparation, action, reflection, and it's actually a celebration. I changed it to demonstration so that there was something more weighty, because it can't just be a pizza party to congratulate kids on you did a good job. It's not about that. It's about demonstrating and sharing. You can give them pizza, but that's not the point. It's about demonstrating and not only what we learned, but what we did and how we learned it. But investigation was pulled out of preparation because people weren't doing it enough and weren't being more alert of how critical investigation is. So I'll take a few minutes and talk about that. All right? Is that
yes,
good?
please do.
Please do. Please do.
And when I do my workshops, whether it's virtual or in person, I spend the bulk of the time on investigation because it is that important. So investigation has 2 parts. I was doing a workshop with some students yesterday online. I said, how many parts does it have? And they all had to repeat it back to me. So how many parts does it have?
2 parts.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you. All right. So it has 2 parts. The first part is we have to check in and find out who we are. We have to investigate ourselves. That's the first part of the investigation. Because if we don't know what we each bring to the table, that virtual table, we're really working with one hand tied behind our backs. And this is true whenever youth get to work together. You know how very often you have a group project, there's an outlier, right? And that's because we haven't taken the time before any group task, whether it's in a science class or English class or whatever, to just check in and say, well, okay, what are the interests, skills, and talents that you bring? And lately we've added, because of one of my consultants in Switzerland, Erin, she added values. So what are our values, our interests, our skills and talents, and areas for growth? And that's a very IB term, right? Areas for growth. So instead of me just asking each of you to tell me, what I would do is have you interview each other, because then we're building skills of active listening, asking questions and probing further, and also being able to record that. So I'm going to have you 2 do just a quick example. So Sally, why don't you ask me, because I'm going to show you the problem. Sally, why don't you ask me what I'm interested in, okay?
Oh, Kathy, tell me what you're interested in.
I don't know. Okay, now that's a showstopper right there.
It
So
is.
one of the things I always do is I always model that and say, could that happen? Of course it could happen, because in many cultures and most societies, we're supposed to be very quiet about who we are and what we bring to the
Talk
table.
about yourself, yeah. Be
Right,
more.
don't talk about yourself. So we have to acknowledge that, respect our cultures, but also know in this space and in this time, we must know the abilities others bring so we can actually do something well together. So we have to acknowledge that up front. And it's also a message to students and to all of us, to adults, because adults should be doing this too in a faculty, because then when you can share each other's interests, skills, and talents all the time. When we do this, then we really communicate effectively that every person is a person of value to the group. And so it's very important we do this, and then we create a document, a shared document that shows our interests, skills, and talents, areas for growth and values, so that we can keep adding to them and really see how much we're doing as a community. Once students do this with each other, they can do this with their parents or other significant adults in their families and bring that information back to a school. Now imagine if you knew the interests, skills, and talents of parents in your community. You now have a whole wealth of resources you can draw upon all the time. If you don't have that, I don't even know how we can teach anymore, because we really need experts and expertise to really heighten what we're doing.
And I think, Kathy, that aspect then really reinforces the fact that education is a collaboration between the teachers and students and parents. It's not something that teachers do to students and then report to parents. It should be something that works collaboratively.
Exactly. I remember I was working in Costa Rica once, which I absolutely loved going to Costa Rica. And I was doing a parent meeting about service learning, and one of the parents in the room was just lovely, was describing how she's a civil rights attorney. No one in the school knew that. Now, if you knew you had a civil rights attorney that you could bring into a classroom, that's a lot better than not knowing, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
we really need to do this as a community. We need to have teachers do it with teachers, we need students do it with students, and then students do it with, but the underlying skill they're getting is how to really develop a really great interview process, which will be critical when we talk about the MISO method.
Which is part 2, I'm guessing.
I'm guessing.